Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
Hey everyone, I'm John.
And I'm Alton.
And this is The Deciding Factor. We have another good one for you. And we'll actually have a special guest here that I'm going to introduce. But this show is actually about if finding solutions is really the key to success in being successful. Whether it's everyday life issues or if it's entrepreneur that you want to be a part of, whatever it may be. However, this man who I have sitting on here with us, I tell you what, I can't wait to get into some of the stories that we're going to hear with him. This guy is Maxwell Ivey. I'm going to start out with, he is from Houston, Texas, which is always great. He is actually totally blind, and he is a man who has transformed himself from a morbidly obese failed carnival owner to a respected amusement equipment broker in the best health of his life now. He started his first online business in the wake of a marketplace in September of 2007, which was pre-Wi-Fi, pre-WordPress, and pre-Facebook. He had also learned many things, including how to hand code HTML, recruit clients, set fees, manage images, build email lists and social media, record videos, and so much more. He has also inspired many by his willingness to take on difficult challenges and scary opportunities, and they encouraged him to then share more about what he's done as an entrepreneur, especially since he's blind. That led to a second website, a blogger, as the Blind Blogger, writing 3 self-help books, dozens of podcasts and radio interviews, traveling across country solo, mind you, at that, singing in public speaking, and hosting his own podcast, which is called What's Your Excuse? I want to welcome you, the blind blogger himself, Maxwell Ivey. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. Yeah, thank you. Applause is always welcome. John, Alton, I appreciate y'all having me on the podcast. And I tell you what, it's always great. I'm a podcaster myself, and one of the things I struggle with is doing other people's intros. So it's always great when I see the host, just kind of stumble through it like I do. That makes me feel right at home.
Wait, I didn't stumble at all. What are you talking about?
It's partly my fault because I need to rewrite my intro because some of those words just don't fit well together when you're trying to say them. I've tried reading it myself sometimes, and so, but yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on the show. I'm looking forward to telling some stories and teaching some life lessons and hopefully making you and the audience out there laugh and also learn something at the same time.
Absolutely.
So I have to ask here, HTML. I know some HTML and I can see a screen. How does that work?
All right. Well, first, just about every blind person and most sighted people know about screen readers for computers, which is basically it's a piece of software that converts the text on the screen to speech, to audio, so that I can hear what this computer is doing. Now, that doesn't help me with spatial arrangement. It doesn't allow me to tell whether, say, a photo is in the top left corner or the bottom right, or whether, say, if you have multiple photos on the screen, whether they're aligned or not.
Mm-hmm.
It won't let me do that. But the screen reader will, repeat back. I could go character by character and have it tell me less than, greater than, slash. And, thankfully I got some help from a website developer named Ashley Fox at Mad Lemmings in Switzerland, of all places, a few years ago. So I now use WordPress, which means I no longer have nightmares about less thans and greater thans chasing me around the room.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was horrible because, you only had to get just one character wrong and, a page would be broken. And if that page was your home page and you got that one character wrong, your website was down for a while. So, I did the best I could. I've really been wonderful over the years at living with good enough, and then spending my time and energy and worry on things that I could actually do something about. So I did build the website with HTML code. I did borrow or receive gifts of some PHP and Java code that I used that I would just copy and paste. But
that's impressive. I'm just saying. That's really impressive.
No, I never stole anything. Okay, let's just make that clear from the get. It was always sent from them to me. I never stole nothing. But with the HTML, it was like I say, you'd have rows upon rows of text, and sometimes it would take me hours to find the thing that I messed up. The thing that gave me the most trouble with errors was photos, and I finally realized that if I did a better job of naming my photos before I tried to embed them, I didn't have near as much trouble, because with the photo you've got to have the name of the photo, and the text file the file name has to agree with the actual file name, and then you have to have the width and the height and the border. And I'm saying stuff most of the world doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about.
We probably shouldn't get too deep in it. Everybody's going to sleep, but that I'm acknowledging the awesomeness of what you're doing.
and actually, just deciding that my website was good enough and focusing on helping people sell rides is part of my whole message, and it's why, even though I don't sell a lot of rides anymore and I focus more on the blogging and writing and stuff, I still keep the website going because, one, it provides a valuable service to the small business owners in the carnival industry, and two, it's part of my story. So one of my favorite stories is creating my first website, because I went through the w3c.org school online. I took their tutorials. I did them one thing at a time, create the homepage, create a link, embed a photo, make a photo into a link, have your email address so people can just click and send you an email, which I later learned was wrong, because too many people will send you emails if you make it easy for them to send you emails. So I did all that stuff. The one real thing I messed up with, though, was picking my colors, because, obviously I'm blind. I can't see the colors. And in HTML, you have two choices. You can either choose by name or by color number. And I got no idea what Aurora blue looks like, or what steel gray is. So, and I don't know what whatever numbers go with whatever names. So I went with just plain colored names like there would have been in my coloring box when I was 5.
Yeah.
So I picked yellow for the background. I picked blue for the text, red for the link text, and orange for previously clicked link text. And what I ended up with was ice creaming yellow, dark navy blue, brick red, and fluorescent orange, like something you see on the side of a bar on 5th Street in Austin, Texas. More than once, people have said, Max,
wait, how do you know what color it is down on 6th Street?
I have people who have described things to me, and I didn't lose my vision until I was in college. So I'm not going to say I was
trouble
ever
before
on
you
6th
lost it.
Street. No, I'm not going to say I was ever on 6th Street. I went to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. So, but I do have people who have described colors to me and things of that nature. So, plus it's a good story, Nice. It's a good line, and I like telling stories, and if it's part of a good story, I'm going to keep using it. So the orange was very bright. The other day I was doing a podcast with a guy from Australia. I said, it's orange like off the side of a Formula One car, and he automatically knew what I was talking about. Here I would say it was like off the side of a NASCAR vehicle. So more than once over the years, people have said, Max, your site was so bright that Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder could have argued over it.
Nice.
It was bad. But, I got it to the point where it served its purpose, which was it allowed me to load photos and descriptions up to the website where people could see the rides. Because if they can't see them, they can't want them. And if they don't want them, they're certainly not going to buy them. So it was, okay, we're going to reach out and find more people that'll let me sell their stuff. We're going to get their stuff online, and we're going to promote the heck out of it until we find a new home for their stuff. And that's what I did. And so I decided that, okay, I'm not a great webmaster. I didn't have the money or the comfort to hire somebody to do it for me, even if I had the money.
Mm-hmm.
So, I focused on what I could do, which was building the business and figuring at some point down the road, I will either learn more or I'll be able to hire somebody that knows more and we'll make it better. And in 2012, that's exactly what we did. We moved over to WordPress. It became a much more traditional site. Mm-hmm. It became much easier to use because I no longer have to care what HTML does.
Even WordPress is tricky though, so it's not that straightforward.
I'm not liking the Gutenberg at all because there's too much drag and drop in it, and that's not easy when you're using a screen reader, mainly because at least in Apple, you don't have a mouse for using the screen reader. You have to use a whole bunch of keys together to simulate a mouse click to do drag and drop. So I'm not crazy with the what they call Gutenberg or the block editor, but it's here to stay. So, I'm trying to get used to it. And I do sometimes find myself still dropping HTML code in WordPress pages and posts because, you do something for 7 years, it kind of becomes part of you. It kind of becomes hard to break yourself of it, even when you're supposed to go up there and click the button to add an image, or you're supposed to click the button to add a link as opposed to, putting in that code. So, and I appreciate you stopping and asking about the HTML because, quite honestly, I tend to gloss over it. I don't really seem to appreciate it as much as I should because that was a very difficult challenge. It's a hard thing to do if you can see it. It's not any easier, although my brother says he thinks it's easier with screen reader because when your eyes start to run and those less than's and greater than's start to become X's and rhombuses, he said that doesn't happen to you with a screen reader. I said, you're right, that doesn't happen with a screen reader.
Well, I can say from someone who bangs their head on a keyboard regularly that's no small feat. And I started doing HTML when I was in high school. So I'm been around for a while and it's not my most favorite thing, but surely at some point you thought, why am I doing this? And why did you keep going?
Because I didn't have a choice. This is back before anything related to now, but in my earlier days, I worked in a family carnival. I spent a lot of time going up and down the road with my dad. Because I was blind, they tried as much as possible to keep me from having to set up and take down the heavy steel. Not that we ever had any really big major rides, but we had a couple. And it was always thought that it was safer for me to be in the truck with him, getting stuff from one town to the next as opposed to taking it down and setting it back up. So a lot of times I would be with him and we would be faced with a problem. And we would, and I can give you an example of one of those if you'd like to hear it, but we would find a solution. We'd show up at the lot the next day in the next town, and people would always go, Max. And of course, I need to mention my dad's name was also Max. So they would be talking to him. They'd go, Max, how did y'all do that? And he would always say, what, did we have a choice? And so I spent 15 years helping drag a carnival up and down the roads of Texas, the Midwest, the Southeast. And it really built up my muscles as far as finding solutions. And so when we get to starting the website in 2007, and basically, if I didn't do it, nobody else was going to do it. And I really didn't have an option B because at that point, I felt like I knew two things: running a carnival and helping people sell rides. I had no idea that I could be a blogger, a podcaster, an author, a traveler, a public speaker, or that anybody would want to hear me if I did. So this is, way back in the way back, or the ago, as Stephen King likes to call it. And, but he taught me that over the course of many years. And there's a podcaster I love from the UK. His name is David Rafe. And he once introduced me by saying, Max, what you did with that carnival, that basically was like a PhD program in hustle and muscle. And,
I love it.
And I try to remember that because, people will ask me now, well, Max, how do you get out of some of these situations you get yourself into? And I think it's really just a belief through trial and error, lots more error. It's a belief that somehow, some way, either by my ability, by other people's ability, or by the grace of God, I'm going to get to next week. Because that's how we used to think about it. In the carnival business, all you worry about is, can you get open? Can you make it to next week on Thursday so that people can buy cotton candy or ride the Ferris wheel and maybe win a stuffed animal. That's all your focus is. And you really don't care what it takes to get you from this week to next week, which is why even now I still can't get a credit card, because there were times that I maxed out credit cards so that I could put gas in trucks, or that I bought stuff on credit that I never paid for. That's because it was us against the world. It was get open or else. And so, I've got that in my DNA maybe now, that when it came to building the website, it's like, what, Max, what else are you going to do? If you don't do this, who's going to do it for you? And so it really became, I'm not really a competitive person, but I think it became really a competitive thing. Like, somehow I'm going to do this, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much I don't like it, and just continue to go forward and take the next step. So thankfully with the W3C school, it was broken down into very small lessons and things you could replicate and then move on and then eventually combine them all into one page. And that really did help a lot.
Yeah.
And I think this goes back to the question you guys were talking about before we came on the show, which is, when it comes to deciding to find solutions, where does that come from? And, a lot of that for me comes from having done it for years in a totally different business, but pretty much getting used to and expecting that, somehow we're going to find a way, because what we have, do we have what else? Is there a way we could not do it? Which, since I started being online, a lot of people turn that into, well, if Max can do it, then what's my excuse?
Exactly.
So, nowadays I say, if I didn't do it, what's my excuse? Well, my excuse was, I don't like doing HTML. Yeah, but it was the only way to get online.
Yeah. And you did this all before Facebook was really big and all that. But you also just wrote a book about all your experiences, especially starting out when you got into blogging and singing and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I'm on my 4th book now, and I owe my community a 5th book, which will be the end of this particular travel series that I've been working on. The latest one is called The Blind Blogger's First Speaking and Signing Adventures, How You Can Conquer Your Fears. And I don't know if that's the book you read or if you read the Leading You Out of the Darkness book, but this latest book was about my first travels. It was my second solo trip, but my first to travel around the country doing public speaking and book signings to promote myself as an author. And it was a crazy 6 weeks. I talk about, missing trains, having events canceled, being short of money, what I did to bring money in, people I met, experiences I had. And, a lot of people came together. Many of them I didn't know before any of that trip started, to help make it possible. People that invited me to stay in their homes, that arranged events for me to be at, who came up with activities and experiences for me to do while I was staying with them. And all of that happened because I said, okay, I got an invitation to go speak at an event in Philadelphia called DreamCon. And as soon as I told people I was going to go to Philadelphia, it was like everybody else wanted me to come where they were. It was very encouraging. And, of course, about the second or third week, there were some times when it got very difficult, especially on the side of financing the trip. But I just decided that there had to be a solution, and I recruited a new client and convinced them to pay me in advance.
Wow.
I reached out to past clients and offered to give them a discount if they would re-up with me now.
So the book was the Blind Blogger's First Speaking and Signing Events, which is the one you're talking about,
which is the latest book, right? Now and in there it talks about how I sang at a public speaking event. It talks about what happened when some of my books turned up missing, and I had a positive feeling about what would happen to them, and they ended up being shared with a school in Africa. It's a very encouraging book, but you may have read my first book, which is called Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light, A Blind Man's Inspirational Guide to Success, which is about how I went from being a carnival owner, how I accepted the failure of the family business no longer being in business, how I accepted that my cousin's efforts to push me out of the business were for my good, because it allowed me to get physically healthy and to focus on something that was totally mine instead of continuing to compete on the midway where I wasn't welcome and wasn't making any money. You know, that book is about those experiences. And so which book are we talking about, the first one or the fourth one?
I think it's the fourth one. It's the one that we talked about on Twitter, and I actually retweeted it. But so what really got me interested was you did talk about going from Houston all the way up to New York for a speaking gig, and it didn't sound like the guy was going to really pay you anything, but you ended up asking, which was crazy because I probably would have never had the guts or the balls to do so, right? but you asked if people would actually not mind hosting you, and you ended up turning an Amtrak ride all the way up there into, I think it was a 6-week ordeal, just because you asked a question, and then it turned into, I think it was a profitable event, right?
Yeah, it turned out to be a profitable event. I sold some books along the way. I made some connections that would turn into clients later. You know, that's one of the things about speaking at conferences, is because, especially if you've never done it before, is a lot of times you think, I'm going to go speak at the conference and I'm going to sell a lot of stuff and I'm going to get hired by a bunch of people. Well, what usually happens is what usually happens is if they do hire you, they're going to hire you 3 months, 6 months, or even a year or more later. Just this spring, I spoke at a conference in Florida for the second year in a row and got hired by somebody I met for the first time the previous March. And that's, that's the way it works. But you don't know that until you do it, until you put yourself out there and take the risk and go, okay, if I follow my ass, fine. If this works out, fine. And, somewhere in the middle, it didn't destroy me financially. I didn't get rich doing it, but I had some great experiences that have now led to a fourth book. And people are inspired and encouraged by reading the story. And
but you were pretty ballsy on one of those things. Like the first city you showed up was Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't show up in the middle of the day. You showed up at nighttime. And if the people that are listening right now, I'm sorry, this guy is pale white, basically, showing up in Philadelphia at nighttime by himself. What?
It's even worse than that.
Oh.
when I got to Philadelphia, I got there late. So my ride, Joe Pardo, who was going to pick me up at the train station, said, Max, just come along to the HopeWorks Center where I work, and I will take you to the hotel after I'm through working. So I am a pale white guy, as you said, taking a cab to Camden, New Jersey, which at the time was the third most dangerous city in America, at dark, not knowing that I was going to Camden, that it was such a big deal. And my host, Joe, is like, Max, did the cab driver ever ask you, like, are you sure you want to go there? He said, did they try to talk you out of coming? I'm like, no, the guy just wanted to know if I had enough money to cover the fare. He said,
he was worried about the insurance policy at the end.
That too, maybe. I did make him wait until somebody came and answered the bell, so I knew that I could get in where I was going. But yeah, that's part of my, I think that's kind of a superpower of mine. And I'm going to share this expression. You guys I hope you understand it. A lot of people get mad when I say this, but it's true. And it's really helped me. And I wish more people could get to the same place. To me, the reason why I can do a lot of this stuff is I'm just not smart enough to be scared. And I have a friend who has translated into that to say, Max, what you mean to say is you have a wide-eyed, wondrous curiosity about the world, almost a childlike approach to life. I'm like, that sounds better, but my way is quicker. And
you just don't see it coming is really what it comes down to, right?
I just don't appreciate, just like the HTML, I have a hard time appreciating how difficult that was. And with a lot of things I do now, people really do sometimes have to go, Max, do you realize what you're doing or what you just did? And sometimes it is like, when I left the train station in Jacksonville to go to South Carolina, my brother is like, Max, don't let nobody know you have the tablet or they'll probably pull a knife on you and steal it from you. And I'm like, I really was never worried about my safety in any of the train stations. The only time I was kind of nervous was on the way home when my Aunt Paula took me to the train platform in in Spartanburg because they don't actually have a train station there. And we go to get out of her truck, and she's like, she asked her husband, Mark, she said, Mark, should we take both guns? And Mark said, no, you can leave yours in the glove box.
You know,
that was one of the few times I was actually nervous, you know,
but you turned this into like a whole U.S. tour, though, because you went up to Buffalo, New York, back down to Raleigh, South Carolina, I believe, or North Carolina, and then you went down to Columbia, South Carolina, all in one big trip, right? I think that was, and then somehow you didn't get lost in the whole mix or get left behind or anything. And you actually had time to have fun as well as work, which is a big part you made in your book.
Yeah, because and one of the things people laugh about whenever they read it is in there I talk about how too many authors and speakers they pack their schedules to the point that they tire themselves out, they endanger their health just to get as much done so they can get back home, and then they get home and they wonder why they're tired and sick. And you know, I'm like, I never want to be that person. So if I'm going to go somewhere, in the last year, I've had to do some events where other people were making the schedule, so I didn't have the time to enjoy myself like I usually do. But I would much rather get there early and stay in people's houses, you know, enjoy local experiences and attractions as much as possible, have some conversations with people, and enjoy the experience, because none of us, probably very few of us, are going to get rich doing this. And the ones who do get rich, you know, what's that going to get them? And the end of it, to me, those experiences that I've had, the effect that I had on the people around me at the time, those are going to last a lot longer than any money I could have got paid. Now, don't get me wrong, I am at the point now where I ask people to pay me, which is something I had to work on. But you're right. I asked people if I could stay with them, and people said, yeah, come on. I ask people now, I tell people now, you know, if y'all, this was before Corona, I tell people, you know, if y'all want the blind blogger to speak, you can write me a check, or you can pay my expenses and make sure I'm taken care of while I'm in your town. And, you know, a lot of that can be done without a lot of expense, or nowhere near as much of an expense as, you know, as writing a check and hiring a speaker that way. And I enjoy it. I mean, as long as they're going to provide my transportation and feed me and make sure I have good coffee and the other stuff, I'm good. And if they got a few dollars in their pocket they want to give me on the way out of town, that's good too. But to me, it's about the experiences, it's about the joy, and it's also about the lessons I can teach by implication. Because one thing, my good friend Joe Pardo, who started this whole trip by asking me to come to Philadelphia, or I asked him, because we're still not sure who asked who, because the emails are no longer available. But regardless of who asked, it was probably me.
Wait, who deleted the email?
Wait a second.
It was probably me, because I'm kind of known for asking for stuff, usually stuff I don't actually deserve yet. But
it wasn't anybody in the government that deleted the emails?
No. I'm not famous enough for government to no, but he kind of started the thing. He likes to tell people that Max may not be able to see with his eyes, but he opens the eyes of every person who meets him. So to me, that's the most important thing of going out on these experiences, doing public speaking or book signings, or just going to meet people and enjoy the time. And so that's what I focus on more. And a lot of times it does just come down to asking. And you know, as I'm known for telling people, if you don't ask, they can't say yes, which is something else my dad taught me back when I had to do the cold calling to book our carnival. We had a 7-ride carnival, and we were competing against carnivals with 15 or 20 or more rides, with newer rides, with more thrilling rides. And so it came down to making more phone calls until you found people who didn't have anybody or had somebody even worse than us. And my dad would just say, whenever I complain about it, I go, look, I'm tired of this. He would go, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. Now make the next phone call.
Yeah.
And this was back when, this was before I even had a computer. So in order to make these phone calls, what he would do is he would get these books from the state of Texas, and he would read me the numbers, and I would type the names and numbers down on a Perkins Braille writer. And then I would make the calls from that, and then make my notes from each call on the same Perkins Braille writer. And I dragged that old Braille writer all around the country with me. And it was funny. Sometimes I feel like I was more productive, with all that stuff in Braille than I am now with a computer, a smartphone, and a tablet.
Huh.
So was your dad coaching you on these cold calls, or I mean, how old are you when you start cold calling?
Well, if we're talking about doing it, as a regular thing, I'm in late 20s.
Okay.
If we're talking about doing it just because I wanted to do it, probably as early as 14 or 15.
I mean, because these are things that, I feel some of the things that you've done that you're excelling at are really difficult things that the majority of people, they don't want to do, right? Like, hey, do you want to go swim with sharks? Probably half the people are going to be like, sure. And then you go,
I'm not doing that. I don't do that. That's on my red list. I don't do that.
But you'll get up in front of people and speak. And that's when 99% of people are like, I'm out. Where's the Shark Tank? I'm ready. So water cold, I don't care. And so
We'll just tell you you're going with the Dolphins this time.
like cold calling, anyway.
So that might just work. So please don't tell nobody else that, okay?
What's motivating you for, seeking, because I see you as someone who really, maybe somewhat like myself, and forgive me if you don't like my explanation of it, but I'm kind of addicted to growth, and growth is like a big thing that satisfies me. And I see that in you, that it's like maybe you get bored easily and you're like, well, what's something else challenging I can do to grow in? Hey, here, let's go. But there's got to be something that's driving it.
Yeah, I understand the way you've put that. I think that I'm easily distracted. I have a lot of curiosity. I enjoy solving problems and finding answers. I was that kid in school who always had his hand up. So I think it's more just a love of the hunt and curiosity. And one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book, Big Magic, tells authors that curiosity will carry you through when passion abandons you. And so I can see what you're saying about it being addicted to growth, or being just very comfortable with growing to the point, how we talk about some people are very comfortable in their current life circumstances, even though their current circumstances are painful. They're comfortable there, so they don't want to venture out because they feel like things could be worse, no matter how bad they are now. But I think people like you and me, we are comfortable with growth. We're comfortable with challenge. And when I think back to when my doctor asked me if I wanted to go to a seminar on gastric surgery, I came back and told her, when I went, I wasn't interested. But when I found out there was a whole lot of work that you had to do along with the surgery, I was interested. So I do think challenge, difficulty, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, I think we have those things in common, yes.
Yeah. I just, when I read some of your book, because I haven't gotten through it yet, you made it too long for me, and I hate reading, but I wish you would have done the audio. I tried to click the audio, it didn't work. But it's, if I look at your whole story, even from just the first few chapters, and I'm just sitting here going, if I were in your shoes, blind, can't see, partially see, whatever it may be, I don't think I could do some of the things you've done, especially HTML. There's no way. I mean, I'm nerdy enough to know coding and know and I'm very anal attentive when it comes to all this OCD stuff. So,
yeah.
But I mean, I don't understand, how were you thriving and pushing and just always finding these solutions?
Good teachers. Good teachers. I grew up with from 3-4 years old. I was working on the Midway during the summers. I grew up around people who didn't tolerate feeling sorry for yourself. Their whole thing was, we're hardworking people. If it'd be better for you to do something. And the worst thing we could ever tell my grandmother or most of my family is that you were bored, because that meant there was work you could do for somebody else that they didn't want to do themselves, like scrubbing the cotton candy pans or the canvas ballycloth that goes around the or wrapping chains or doing others, just stuff that was just plain nasty that you'd have to wash your hands when you were through, So I grew up in a family of people that did stuff. They taught us that, there's value in effort and work and trial. So I also had good teachers in school. I spent a lot of years learning from my dad, who, if he could realize that, he was such a great mentor, he would probably be really happy about that, although he might not understand it. But moving the carnival up and down the road for years, finding bookings sometimes at the last minute, it's just been a lot of great practice. And, it didn't always work. There's been times where we had our equipment on somebody's property for 2 or 3 weeks trying to solve the problem of the lack of money from the previous event so we could get out of town. Or there's been times where we had to leave equipment where it was because the ground was flooded. There was no way to get out.
Wow.
And we left one of those kids' play ports and a little airplane ride, and we left them set up on the lot. And 3 weeks later, me and him go back. The lot is still muddy. So we took 2x8 pieces of plywood and put them down on the ground. And he would drive the truck back 8 feet or 7 feet, and we would swap. We had 4 of them. We'd swap the next 2 and drive back another few feet until we eventually got the truck underneath the hitch of that playport. And so then we took the playport down, and then, we've got this other kiddie ride, which is what they call a ground mount kiddie ride, which means it's not mounted or connected permanently to a trailer. And so we took that ride apart. We loaded the steel that made up the center for it on the pickup truck. And then we loaded the airplanes on the top of the playport. The playport was a 2-story kiddie ride. And so there was place up there. The only problem was me and my dad had to lift these 200-pound planes over our heads onto that platform up there. And every time I would go to lift up, my pants would fall down. And I'd pull it back. We'd set the plane down. I'd pull my pants back up. It was about the 3rd or 4th time I said, Dad, I don't care if there's anybody looking or not. Let's just get these things on the trailer. And when we're through, I'll pull my pants back up. And he said, okay, but when we get out of here, I'll buy you some suspenders.
So the naked blind blogger, that's what we really need to call it.
There you go. So we got all that stuff loaded up, and then we went back off of the lot the same way, over 300 feet, 8 feet at a time, and got back to Houston. And like always, people were like, how did y'all do that? And, he's like, well, what? Did we have a choice? I mean, it wasn't like they were going to let us leave that stuff at the airport forever.
So now how did you, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was, go ahead, John.
So you have done carnival singing, which, did you end up on America's Got Talent or anything yet?
No, because they won't let me apply.
What? Did they give you?
Here's the thing. The rules are you have to submit a video singing with actual music. And I don't have any way to do that. So at this point, there's no way for me to apply to be on that show. I've looked into it.
Okay, screw that. You need to come to Austin. So I've got this scar on my eye, and I feel like we need to get a hold of Gary Clark Jr. because he owes me after beating me up as a kid. And he can do the guitar. You can sing in front. So I think we should make it happen.
Does he know any country music? Because I don't really know.
So Gary Clark Jr. is actually kind of like a jazz or blues player, like Jimi Hendrix type stuff from back in the day. But yeah, so no country, I don't think. But I think he was on the CMA Awards playing with a country group. So he's a badass guitar player, so he could do whatever you need to do. But
I don't know, man. I hate to say this because people are maybe going to think less of me for saying it, but I'm not exactly sure I would know how to act in order to sing with somebody that's that talented. I mean, I've never had that opportunity. So I'm not going to say it scares me, but I am saying I might try to get out of it. You know?
Well, tell us a little bit about your health transformation. I mean, that's another area that requires a lot of effort and dedication. And so tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. Well, I had a health emergency in the summer of 2011 or 2010 in Port Lavaca, Texas. I was almost kicked out of a motel for urinating on their linens. And I went to a doctor, and the doctor said, you know, Mr. Ivey, if you don't change your lifestyle, you're not going to be around long. And he said, I don't mean years, I mean months.
Wow.
So I went home and found a primary care doctor, which is the first time I had health insurance, much less a doctor, and I had both. And really liked the woman, so we talked about everything that was going on with my health. And so first she's like, we're going to keep you alive. So she put me on I think I was on 7 prescriptions, taking 11 pills a day.
Whoa.
For blood pressure, cholesterol, gout, low good cholesterol, which is actually dangerous for those of you who don't know. The next thing she did was she said, Mr. Ivey, I can tell when you breathe to talk that you probably have sleep apnea. And it's probably a pretty severe case. So she convinced me to be examined for sleep apnea, have a sleep study. And it turns out that, yes, I did have it. I do have a severe case of it. And while they don't like to diagnose teenagers, my cardiopulmonary person that diagnosed me at the time said he wouldn't be a bit surprised if I was suffering with it going back as early as high school.
Wow.
And so it's one of those things, when you find out about it later, you're like, man, what would I be now if I had known I had sleep apnea and done something about it 30 years ago? Because it really does affect so much of your life. Because if you're not getting good air, you're not getting good sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, it leads to a whole host of problems for you. Higher blood pressure, hypertension, higher risk for heart attack and stroke, impotence in men, fuzzy thinking, lack of interest, even depression in some people. So all those things can happen if you're not getting quality rest, which goes back to your oxygen. They put me on a CPAP machine, which I've been on for years now. And it's, not funny at all is that my progression as far as starting and growing my business, helping people sell rides, happened about the same time I started getting physically healthy. And so after the CPAP, and I did that for a year or so, my doctor convinced me to go to listen to a seminar on gastric surgery. And I went down there thinking that I'm not going to do this because to have surgery is quitting, admitting that you're not capable of doing it yourself. But I heard the doctor talk, and basically they explained that only 50% of the people who have a surgery lose 80 to 90% of the weight they need to lose and keep it off. That quite often people will put the weight back on or even gain weight after a surgery, and that it requires changing your lifestyle in a lot of ways in order for the surgery to work long term. So as I said earlier, once I knew that it was not a quick fix and that I'd have to do a lot of work along with the surgery, I was in. It was a 2.5-year process from my first weigh-in to getting down to my ideal weight. I weighed in at 512 pounds on February 14th of 2012. We've got pictures of me where it looks like I probably weighed 600 or more. I'm now somewhere around 265, 270, which my doctor says for my height and bone structure is a good weight for me, even though the BMI chart would disagree. But he's like, Mr. Ivey, I want you to, his thing is there's healthy weight and then there's healthy, sustainable weight. And he's like, you could probably, according to the chart, he says, 250, 255 is your ideal weight. That's where you should be. He said, but is that sustainable for you? Probably not. He said, but the 265, 270, he said, that's sustainable. And so that's where I like to be. That's where I'm at now. And it's great being able to maintain it, but it does take work, and we had to make a lot of changes. We had to change portion sizes, plates, the sizes of the plates we use. The two most important things I did, or three, were switching from liquids to solids, because you can take in a lot more calories from liquids than you can from solids. Drinking a lot more water and giving up caffeine. Those were those were the ones that really made a lot of difference in my weight right away. And there were people who asked me, Max, you lost 80 pounds before the surgery. Why did you go ahead and have the surgery? And I'm like, I've been there before many times in my life, and it never took. It never lasted. My lifestyle would get in the way. I'd get distracted by doing something else. Stress would come along, and I would eat. So I had the surgery. The surgery went really well. I had what's called a duodenal switch, which is really 2 procedures. They sometimes do them in 2 separate operations, but my doctor said I had lost enough weight where he could do it all at one time. And by taking part of the stomach and part of the intestine instead of taking a bigger part of the stomach, it allows you to have less sickness, less stomach upset as you go forward. And I've been really happy with it. The really funny thing about it is because of all the follow-ups and all the blood work that I had to have for my gastric surgery, I found out that I have what's called chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or CLL. Now, before anybody gets worried, I'm in stage 0. My white blood count is at 20,000 to 30,000. It stays in that range. It's very stable. 8 to 11,000 for your white count is considered normal. And so I'm in stage, and at this point, all the research over the last 20 years says that there's no benefit to trying to take aggressive treatment for it at this point. And as my doctor explained to me, he said, yeah, Mr. Ivey, you could get your white count back down to 8. He said, but you wouldn't enjoy it. As long as it's stable, it is. He said, don't worry about it. It does mean that I was more cautious about corona than a lot of people are. I've even canceled a couple of doctor's appointments recently because I don't think the risk reward is good enough for me, because the doctor I was seeing was not a necessity. It wasn't anything critical. And I just don't want to risk my health. And I encourage other people to err on the side of caution too, because a lot of us have conditions that we either don't know about or don't think about. How many guys do you know who are 50 pounds overweight, but they don't think of themselves as overweight, and they certainly wouldn't think of that as a pre-existing condition that would make them more likely to be affected harshly by corona.
Sure.
So when I go back to reading your book and looking into all that, you, I think it was your first chapter. I like how you have these key takeaways at the bottom, and on there it said one of the things that everyone should do is you should not wait until you think your story is good enough before you start sharing it. I thought that was one of the coolest things. So can you, I guess, tell us a little bit of what really made you decide to write a book, let alone 4 books?
All right, I've got to tell 2 stories here. One, why I became the blind blogger, or why I accepted being the blind blogger. Then I can answer the story, but I can answer about the book. Is that okay with y'all?
Sure.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, all right. Okay. I had been working on promoting the Midway Marketplace for several years, and I had come to the attention of a blogger named Adrienne Smith, who I now refer to as my blogging mama. She taught me everything I know about relationship building and relationship marketing and marketing through blog commenting. So if I'm ever on a red carpet and I have an acceptance speech, she'll be in there somewhere. And she's like, Max, you're so much more than a guy selling used carny rides. She said, you just don't realize how powerful your story is. And I said, okay, explain it to me. And she had to explain it to me several times before I finally agreed with her. I fought her for 2 years over the idea that she was right and I was wrong, or vice versa. And she said, here's the way it is, Max. You have a perfect built-in excuse to do nothing. If you wanted to sit on your couch and watch TV and eat junk food, nobody would give you any grief over it at all. They would be totally fine with it. But the fact that you have a built-in excuse and don't use it, that you show up and take on difficult, challenging activities, that's what makes you compelling, because there are so many people out there who have nothing, at least they don't have a physical disability. They don't have a serious roadblock to their accomplishing whatever it is that they want to go after, and yet they don't do anything. They sleepwalk through their lives, and they're very happy doing the same thing over and over again. They don't have an excuse. You do, but you don't use yours. That's what makes your story compelling. And I finally accepted her her expression of my story. So that's part of what I mean when I say, don't wait until you think your story is good enough to start telling it. Because for a long time, I didn't realize I had a story. Because I thought my story was, hey, I'm a guy who shows up every day and works his butt off to build a business to help support his family. That was my story. I did not realize that I had a much better story. And once I realized what it was, I would start telling it. And so that's why I tell people, if somebody, knows you well and says, you got a great story, you really need to share that more openly. And I'm really happy that one of the side effects of Corona is so many people are getting discovered by their local news channels, their local radio stations. So many stories are being told that people would have never thought to bring attention to themselves before this. And so Corona has helped with that. And it's really great, if you have a couple of friends who will point these things out to you about yourself so you realize that you have a story. And that's one of the things I love working with my students about, is helping them understand their stories. Because if Adrian and a few others hadn't told me about mine, I probably still wouldn't be where I'm at now. So,
but how did you find a solution to write this book?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
The book actually,
I'm a little hyper.
Okay.
He made the coffee extremely strong.
I would not know about that. By the way, every once in a while I will have a cappuccino or a latte. So, but here's the thing. I'm finally accepting the idea that I have a story, and I've started telling it. And this woman replies to a comment of mine on her blog, and she said, she basically challenged me to write a book so I could be part of an online summit. And I told her, I've never written a book before. It's not something I plan on doing. And she said, I think you could do it. I think you'd be great at it. And I think you could do it like in the next 60 days. So that you can have
I love this.
so that you would have something to give away or something to give out as a discount for what they call a lead magnet, which is, something nice you can give people for signing up to your email list, which, they had to explain to me what a lead magnet was. But that's what she wanted me to do. And I said, okay, look, I'll be more than happy to try this. But if in 60 days I don't have a book, I'm going to blame this all on you. This is going to be all your fault.
It sounds like me and Alton talking all the time. Hey, I need something done for this.
Yeah, and I'm going to enjoy laughing at this. And she's like, Max, I'm going to share one of my favorite sayings with you. It's from Richard Branson. I said, okay. She said he likes to tell people, agree to do it and then figure out how. And I said, that sounds great, but if we don't figure out how in the next 60 days, this is still going to be all your fault. So she challenged me to write the book. I started writing the book thinking it was going to be, maybe 30 or 40 pages. A few weeks later, she gets back to me and she says, Max, there are 4 other women in this summit, and they've decided for marketing purposes it would be better if it was all women. So you're out. And I'm like, okay, because I grew up in the carnival. I think I see myself as a promoter at heart, and I understand what it is to want to put more feet on the ground or butts in the seats or faces behind the screens in that case. And I said, but I appreciate you challenging me to write the book. I'm not going to quit writing it. So I kept writing it. I started sharing it with people that I knew by email, and people kept telling me it was a great book. But I thought it wasn't really good enough. I didn't think it was long enough yet. I didn't think it had enough stories in it. And finally, a coach friend of mine from California said, Max, I know who your editor is. She said, I know about Lorraine regularly at wordingwell.com because you mentioned her on your website when she helped you fix that problem with your picture, with images. She said, if you don't send this book off to her, I'm going to send it off to her and ask her to edit it for you and help you get it published. So I said,
screw you, you're right now. You don't have a choice.
You've got the right people around you. That's
exactly.
clear to me.
We're going to talk about that too in a minute. Yes. So she talks me into it. I send it off to Lorraine, and we work through the editing process, and she helps me get it formatted and submitted, and helps me find somebody to create a cover for it. And it goes live in January of 2014. I rediscovered my love for writing as we were doing the book. I never planned on writing a book. Don't know if I ever plan on writing 2 books, but as I tell other authors, it's dangerous to write a first book, because once you write a book, there are just way too many ideas out there calling your name, going, write me. But it was a great experience. I learned a lot about myself writing the book, and I shared quite a bit about that with my audience on the blog. Even though I can't see the book, how much joy I felt in holding a copy of my book in my hands for the first time. And I'm told that the smile on my face in that particular photo is probably one of the best pictures I've ever taken when I got the first copy of Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light that first day. So I think that the important thing is if you have good people around you, then, you know, friends like Eve Koivula, who was the one who dared me to write the book, they will double dog dare you. And there's really nothing better. There's really nothing better than a friend going, you know, I'm calling you out, and if you don't do it, you're a chicken.
Well, you know, in reading your book, you know, I think it was your second chapter or one of your other ones. One of the things you said on there was let other people be a part of your story and your success. So automatically right away, I was thinking about Alton here. Is we were sitting down talking one day, and I convinced him to join me in doing this podcast. And it's like, I keep telling him, man, we've got to keep this ride going. It's a lot of fun. And then I read your book, and it's like, yeah, you can't do very successful things alone. And if you do, it's not going to be as enjoyable, right?
Exactly. You've been reading my book, I can tell.
I know, and I hate reading. So
the fact that John's reading your book is huge. I love it.
And I appreciate it. I love how he's promoting the heck out of my book. I won't promise to send him a royalty, but I will send him a thank you note. But it is so true. And, you know, that is one of the worst myths on the internet, because I know you guys probably know more about this than I do, because I can't see a lot of this social media crap. But the truth is, there are just way too many people out there making it look like they're doing this stuff all by themselves.
Yeah.
And that they're enjoying doing it all by themselves. And to me, I just don't think that's real. But so many people see it and they believe it. You know, I'm not really a great fan of Gary Vayne Urquhart, I think is his full name. I think he yells and screams too much. But the one thing I love about him is most of the time on his videos, you see his team. Mm-hmm. You know, his staff is on camera. Sometimes they even answer questions from the audience for him. To me, that's just so valuable, because too many people are making it look like they're the only one doing this. It's kind of like the old, you know, scene from The Wizard of Oz when, you know, when Toto yanks that curtain back and they realize it's just some little midget back there pulling a bunch of levers. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and Lorraine actually spoke about this recently when we were editing this fourth book. She's like, Max, you mentioned more people than any author I've ever worked with or run across or read from. She's like, and I'm like, they're part of the story. If they weren't there, there wouldn't be a story. So how can I tell my story? And, you know, without them, there wouldn't be a story. How can I tell the story if I don't include them? And sometimes that means even including strangers who may never even know that they were in the book. Mm-hmm. And one of these days I'm going to get a letter from somebody's lawyer, and they're going to go, hey, man, we know that you talked about our client favorably, but you didn't get his permission.
Well, just remember us when you write your next one. Make sure you include John and not Alton.
Some of the
Leave him out.
in the podcast world.
We'll have to get involved in some other project together so that y'all become part of the story. You know, that's what we'll have to do. We'll have to find some way to fit y'all in. You know, I mean.
There we go. No, after reading your book, you've been a speech giver. I can't even speak today. I've been drinking.
I think we call these speakers. Yeah. I didn't spike the coffee. I swear. I swear.
Language.
You know, it's intrigued my. Oh my goodness, I can't even speak now. But I thought I would like to do speaking, and in fact, I think it'd be great for the Deciding Factor to go out and do some of these speeches about the guests that we have, such as yourself, where it's just like, a lot of people's issues is trying to get past different barriers in different ways. You know, thinking in your perspective, I thought, man, if I were in his shoes, I couldn't do it. And for you, it wasn't even a question. It was more like, I'm going to do this, and I don't really have a barrier, period. So, I mean, you know, I thought, man, that would be good. And then now you can drag us along with you, and we can just do a big show.
You know, you're the second person to suggest that in 3 days. I mean, it's, and I'm really starting. I mean, you know, I have lots of crazy ideas, as you well know from reading my books. But just a few days ago, my friend from Arizona, who's a publicist, who's been trying to help more people get their eyes on my books. She's responsible for a lot of this stuff on Twitter, actually. Catherine Leon from Catherine's Writing Den. And she's like, Max, a lot of people don't realize how funny you are because they haven't all watched your podcast interviews or read your books. I said, well, then we need to do something about that. And she said, well, what about a tour? I said, yeah, we can get one of them old big tour buses like the rock bands used to do back in the 50s and the 60s, and put 5 or 6 acts on the bus and all go out. And she's like, Max, we couldn't do it that way because half of my authors would kill me after the first week. She said, but it's just funny how this idea is kind of kicking around, and it's not my doing, it's other people's. So like I've also had friends who suggested, Max, one of these days you need to do something with the whole what's your excuse thing in the form of a workshop or a conference or a tour or something. And I've like, whenever that right idea comes along, we'll do it. And I'm actually, taking a big risk saying that, because something else about me by now is I believe that whenever we say things out loud, that's like asking them to happen. It's almost the same as praying for them, because if you're courageous enough to say it out loud where other people can hear you, what's going to happen is people are going to show up to help you. For example, I have this podcast, What's Your Excuse, which started off as a No Excuses show. And for months, I'm doing podcast interviews and hosts are going, Max, when are you going to have your own podcast? I said, when somebody comes along to help me with the technical side, so all I have to do is show up and talk to people.
Yep.
And like 3 weeks later, some guy, Frederick Bai on Twitter, reaches out to me and says, Max, I've been looking for people to join my online network that I'm trying to build. And I noticed that you said that you'd be willing to do a show, So, a few weeks later, we're doing a show. And I'm like, that's the thing. If you say it out loud, sometimes, but this idea of yours, I'm going to blame it on you if it ever happens. This idea of yours to have a bunch of people go out on a tour and do something along the lines of helping people overcome their blocks like that. It's a crazy idea, but I could see it, and I appreciate it. And if you guys know guys who can help us do this, if you guys know guys that can help make that happen after Corona's over, I'm down.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that you mentioned about acknowledging all the people in your life, it just made me think that, because of your blindness, you need like help in certain things that you've come to accept. And I think many men who are on that pursuit of success, there's this idea that we just have to, it's like a macho thing that we're going to do it all by ourselves and I don't need help. And I think that right there in of itself is a handicap, right? Because of what we've talked about, and that how much can you do by yourself, really? I mean, maybe eventually you'll get there, but if you utilize a team and acknowledge that team, which keeps them excited about helping you, then that just accelerates you down that path so much faster than if you just, tried to do it by yourself.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, except I like to think of it as my superpower, because I've learned that I've learned to find the freedom to ask for help and to accept help from others. And I'm glad you wanted to come back to this, because I like to share an expression that I have found helps a lot of people overcome the fear of asking for help or asking for opportunities, because there's different fears, but when it comes to asking for help, people are afraid of looking weak or inept, or like you say, they're not macho. When it comes to asking for opportunities, people think that maybe they're egotistical. Some people might even worry about being seen as being delusional, depending on what they're asking for. I've been told I'm delusional more than once, so it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I think that's
as long as
trait.
they say yes, then they can call me whatever they want to. But I want to help people get free of this fear of asking and accepting, because it does make things a whole lot easier for you. It allows you to make more progress more quickly. My friend Alex Sanfilippo likes to refer to this as the difference between interdependence and independence, and that interdependence is much more valuable. And so here's what I tell people. When you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm often asked to do this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to say it one more time. When you refuse to ask for help, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received by helping you. And what I'm talking about here is, how do you feel when you do something for other people who can do nothing but say thank you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, no matter how small the gesture, whether it's carrying a bag of groceries, opening a door, helping somebody code a website, whatever it may be, you feel good. And so imagine that you're struggling with a particular issue and you know somebody who's the expert.
Yeah.
They've spent years studying, experiencing, and they know it all. They've done it all. And just imagine how much joy they would feel when somebody comes along and sincerely asks them, hey, I'm struggling with this. I know you know this stuff. Would you please help me? And usually if you ask sincerely and you ask the person who you're not asking for the, it's not the first time you've ever met them or talked to them when you ask them. So usually they will say yes. I mean, I can probably count on my hand the number of times I have been told no on something I really needed to have happen. And what's really cool is there have been lots of times where I didn't even have to ask, which I'm going to talk about that in a minute because that's a whole nother area. But, you're actually making somebody else's day harder by not asking them, because just that energy that they would get, that positive energy they would get from helping you, they're not getting it because you're not asking, because you're afraid.
Yeah.
And, and then there's the second part of this is when people offer to help. And I find that there are not a lot of people, but there's a fair number of people that can get to asking for help. That's pretty easy to get people to do. But when it comes to receiving help that's being offered to them, that's a whole nother level, because it's like, who the heck does he think he is? Does he think I need his help? I mean, why is he wanting to help me? I got my stuff all together. There's no reason he should think that I need his help. And I'm serious. That's what most people think if you come along and offer to help them without them having asked you first. And I'm right.
Yeah, some of them think
sure.
it's very offensive, and I sometimes wonder about Alton if he gets upset if I do it.
John recognizes all the help I need, but I'm still in denial.
All right, so
but let me finish that thought. Okay,
sure.
For people who do get offended by it or wonder about it, here's the thing: you did ask for help. You just didn't ask for help out loud. You either prayed about it, or meditated on it, or thought about it, or you even said it out loud to yourself or to somebody who knows somebody. You may have subconsciously mentioned it in a blog post or in a blog comment or in a social media post, because quite often there are people in our circles who are intuitive that way and can tell by something you said that you really didn't think was that telling, and realizing, hey, he needs help with this. He just isn't ready to come out and ask somebody straight up for the help. So a lot of times we ask, we just don't realize that we have asked. And for example, when me and Lorraine first met, and she's been with me on all 4 books, and I love her and the work she does at wordingwell.com. I have to mention her because without her, there really wouldn't. There might have been books, but there wouldn't have been anywhere as near as good, and they would have taken a lot longer. So I really appreciate her. But here's the thing: we met for the first time. I am leaving blog comments on Ashley Falk's website, and she follows one of the links back to my website, and she reads a few posts, and she notices the images on Max's website are off center. They're showing up in the middle of his text, and people are probably not reading his posts because of what the images are doing. He probably doesn't have any way of knowing that that's happening. I'm going to reach out to him, and I'm going to offer to help him with this. And she did. We figured out all we had to do was change one setting in the software I was using at the time to post blogs, and it went away. And that was the beginning of our friendship. But, she posed it in the right way, and she noticed that I was struggling with something and offered to help. Just like, we talked before I came on with you guys about the audio and the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, up until a year ago, I was recording this with no additional light source and using the camera off my laptop. So what that meant was that people would see me from below me looking up at my face, which I understand is a very distracting camera angle. plus it meant sometimes they were looking right up my nose, and sometimes they were looking right up my nose hair. So that was not good.
Waiting for boogers to come flying out.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they take the NASCAR approach to watching podcasts or not. But the other thing, and the other thing is, without an additional light source, I had the natural halo thing going on, where I only had one light behind me, so people would see the disjointed head. That was all they would see. And last year at a conference, a really good friend of mine, Stacy Greenberg, who's an interior designer, amazing woman who raised 2 special needs kids by herself. I love her by herself. She goes, Max, I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this to you. They might be afraid to talk to you about this, but I'm an interior designer, and this stuff bugs the hell out of me. Your camera angle, your video presentation is horrible. And here's why. And, we really need to fix this. But she did ask me, she said, Max, I'm your friend, and I want the best for you. Is it okay if I tell you this? And then she told me, I'm like, I didn't realize it was that bad. So since then, we added another camera. We added an additional light source. And, now when I record videos, I'm still not in studio quality video, but my video now is of a quality that a lot of people are going to go, man, are y'all sure the guy's blind? Because, he's sitting there in a shirt and tie that's actually tied correctly, and he's got the lighting and the camera going on here. Y'all sure he's blind? Y'all check into this to make sure. That's what I want.
I waved at you before we started the show, and you didn't wave back, so that was good enough.
I'm glad. I've got a story I can tell you about that, but I don't know. I'm going to tell it to you in just a second. But there are people who are going to wonder about that. And there's an old expression: if it's easy to impress people who underestimate you. And as a blind person, there are still people out there who expect a blind person to show up in a rumpled coat, or tennis shoes and blue jeans, or hair all out of whack. Or with women, no makeup or makeup that's clownish. There are a lot of people who still don't have very high expectations for visually impaired people, even though there are people out there online who make me look like I should go home and quit podcasting. Because they're just that talented, and some of the there are even a few YouTubers who I'm like, man, learn from, because their audiences are bigger than mine.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing. I do see all my audience. I want them to enjoy the process of the interviews. Plus, I don't want any of this stuff to distract from my guests who have amazing stories to tell, and I want as many people as possible to listen to them. So when I found out from these friends, they offered to help me, because after I bought the equipment, somebody had to get online with me and help me set it up and make sure that it was where it needed to be. And Stacy did that for me with the camera and the lighting. So, when people offer to help you, it's important that they phrase it in the proper way. It's great if they have a connection with you already, just like you should have a connection with people when you ask. But, that is the way it is. And the story, you mentioned you waved at me before we started. And back when I was still traveling with the Carnival, I did the online dating thing. And I arranged to meet a woman in Kansas at the Midway where we were working. And she showed up, and we went somewhere, went to a motel or hotel or whatever. And she said,
wait, are you sure it was a hotel or motel at this point?
Yes, I'm sure. I asked the pizza delivery guy, and he assured me of that. But as you guys know, I don't worry about a lot of that stuff anyway. But here's the thing. I found out like 30 minutes later, after we were there for 30 minutes or so, that her friends had warned her that I might not be blind. So she decided to take her clothes off before, just to see if I would react. And of course I didn't react. And that one thing that she did, I think that ruined it for us. I think when I found out that she was like, man, there's absolutely no trust in the world at all, But yeah, that was, like I say, that was her answer. Her friend said, you need to figure out some way to make sure he's not scamming you. And I don't do the online thing anymore. I'm at this point where if she's going to find me, she's going to find me, because hell, I'm online all the time. I'm everywhere. But yeah, that was when you said that about waving at me. I don't know. I haven't told that story in years. But
well, John still has his clothes on, to be clear. They're all still on.
Screw that. I'm going to test this theory now.
Test the theory.
All right,
Man, you ain't right. You ain't right. But I like you. I like you anyway.
Well, I may have been dropped on my head as a kid, but
yeah, I could see us hanging out on 5th Street or 6th Street or whatever the current location is now. By the way, can you guys give me tickets to South by Southwest when they restart?
well, I tell you what, I'll give you tickets this year right now for it.
No. Yeah, that doesn't do me any better. That doesn't do me any more good than my speaking slot for this year does me. So,
You know, I've never been, even though I live here.
I'm just making that up. Yeah.
But actually, let's do this. So the deciding factor today is finding solutions the key to success? And I guess I'll start it off.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
All right. So I actually don't know that finding solutions is really the answer, because based off of a lot of things that we've talked about and things that you said, Max, I think it all leads to excuses. I think the key to success is stop coming up with excuses. There is no excuse. If the blind blogger can do it, I better figire out
No, come on, man. Use my tagline. If the blind blogger can do it, then what's my excuse? Come on.
there.
Work on me here. I'm building a brand, guys. I'm building a brand. Work on me here. Work on me here.
So although finding solutions is big, don't get me wrong. I've had to find weird solutions for different things at different companies. I really think it's, for a lot of people, even for me, you know, it's always been, money has been the thing that I felt like it has held me back from starting companies or building a bigger company. And all it is an excuse. I need to stop worrying about that excuse, not find a solution, just do it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what this really comes out to, based on what Max has been saying throughout the whole thing. What do you say, Alton?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to hear what Max is going to say on it. Why don't you go ahead? Let's hear it.
Oh, you're going to take the last slot?
Yeah.
So you can steal his answer?
Well, go ahead, Max.
Okay. I think from my perspective, if it's the deciding to find solutions is the key thing. Deciding to find solutions instead of making excuses. Anybody can do it, but it takes practice. And like I said before, I'm really good at it because I've been doing it a long time. I've been getting up off the ground for years. So, but when I write an email to most podcasters, I will tell them that I live by 3 core principles. One is you have to decide to find solutions instead of making excuses. 2 is you have to feel the freedom to ask for help and accept help when offered. And 3 is you have to be determined to find the positive in all experiences and aspects of your life. And that last one is the hardest one. But again, people can do it with practice. And pretty much anything we've talked about today, the real key is that you have to start doing it, do it for a period of time before you're going to get good at it. And sadly, I wish I could tell y'all could be like me tomorrow, but it took me 13 years to get here. So there ain't no way it's going to happen to y'all tomorrow.
I think you just got to build balls of steel like you do, where you can just walk into anywhere and not really care where that is or who you are in that area. Like Philadelphia. Man, that was crazy.
I mean,
so tell us what you think, Alton.
He's got he's got women taking off their clothes and he's not even asking or anything. So I can't say that's
what he gets from the day, man. I can't tell that story no more.
He's giving you stuff to write about.
Here's my angle on this. Like, I love those 3 principles that you pointed out, and I think that John, I'm all in on what both of y'all said. I mean, the excuses are a big problem, and I think we all have a list of them. And there's this idea of like working through those and kicking them out. You know, it's like they're almost there automatically, and we have to work to get rid of them. And kind of what I heard and what both of you said is this word mindset, or our attitude. And Max, I think that you really show a great attitude. You show a great attitude in asking for help and being willing to like, hey, we're going to do some awesome stuff. And if it takes me asking or using it, great. And, you know, you're doing stuff with your dad, your pants are falling off, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to get it done. Right? Like so many people would get a sour attitude about it. And then once that sour attitude comes in, it's like a poison that changes everything. Now you got to sit and ride home and complain about how dumb that was, and we shouldn't have left. You know, it just leads down a really ugly path. And so I love your attitude, and I think that that's why, at least one of the reasons why, so many people want to hear what you have to say, because of your great attitude and lack of excuses and just positivity. It's it's great.
I really appreciate that. And just to answer a question that you didn't ask, but maybe you were wondering about, there was a point in Philadelphia where I actually felt nervous, maybe not scared, but it was a different feeling. It actually happened twice. First, when I heard the other speakers talking about how inspired they were by the fact that I had traveled over 1,500 miles to be there that weekend, I was like, wait a minute, Max, did you do what they're saying you did? Because if you did, man, you're nuts. So at that point, and then the other thing is, at the end of the event, everybody was taking selfies, and I said, you know, hey guys, I would love to record myself singing in front of the banner, if that's okay with you guys, just so I could say I did it. And they said, sure. And they lead me over against the wall in front of the banner, which is a good thing because my legs started shaking and my tummy got nervous, which has never happened to me before or since, either as a speaker or when I'm singing. And I did the first verse of The River by Garth Brooks, and I actually had to think of the words and plan to breathe, because I really was disturbed. And the funny thing about it is, you know, I'm standing there with these other coaches and speakers, and I'm like, these are my people. I shouldn't be nervous. Mm-hmm. But for some reason I was. And then as soon as I'm through, one of the other speakers, Azuka Zook, is one of those guys, he sounds like he came out of his mama talking. And he's like, Max, he said, Max, you're a really great singer, and the music you chose fits great with public speaking. He said, from now on, I don't want to hear that you ever give another talk where you don't also sing. He said, that's going to become your thing eventually. And
nice.
It has kind of become a thing, but I still kind of explain myself some of the time when I go to sing at the beginning or the end of a talk. But I am getting better at it, and it's one of those things that it's actually a bonus, because not only do I do something that's unique and unusual that people will remember, but it's something I do where I face on and feel back to junior school when my voice was changing and my vision was changing. Told me to not sing. They told me to lip sync at a choir contest because my voice was that bad.
Wow.
And so I've gone from people making fun of me singing to singing on my podcast because I didn't have a way to create an intro, to people wanting me to sing, and then now singing as part of public speaking. And it's just another way of where, you know, you find solutions, because a lot of people, when they go to start a podcast, they think, hey, I've got to have an intro. I've got to create one or buy one. And I was like, man, I can't create one or buy one. What do I do? So I sang on the beginning of my first video, and it worked. And that particular experience at PodFest, it really shook me. But like I say, I really didn't realize what all I had started until I started hearing the other speakers from the stage who were using part of their time to talk about how inspired they were by me. And that was when it really hit me what I had just done and what I was in the middle of doing. That was after I'd been on the road for 2 days and was already in Philadelphia.
Wow. Well, you know, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I do want to plug your book one last time. It's The Blind Blogger's First Speaking and Signing Adventures. I've definitely got to get.
You could be right.
I could be right. It should be singing, not signing. Right?
It refers to book signings, but I like the way you think. It's going to get me in trouble sooner or later, but I like the way you think. It's available on Amazon. You can buy it through my website, theblindblogger.net. I'm sure it's going to be mentioned in the podcast when this goes live.
Absolutely.
Would love more reviews on the book. And when people go to my website, they can click on the store link, which is where they can see all 4 of my books with the descriptions and links to buy them. And they can also check out the What's Your Excuse merchandise, where, they can purchase the shirts. And soon I think we're going to add masks. But the store page is where they can buy pretty much anything related to my message on the blindblogger.net/store. And I do really want to thank you guys for the effort y'all put into this podcast. Y'all have obviously invested a lot of time, money, and energy. I appreciate the research. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you've read my books. I know you probably think that's just part of the course, but I'm telling you, it's big to me. I really, really appreciate it and love that. And, from one podcaster to another, and I don't have the, I don't have the studio and some of the other stuff, but I know how hard you guys work. And I just want to make sure you know that I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, because without people like you, there wouldn't be the Blind Blogger. This is how I've built my brand, how people have found out about me. And this is why I love introducing my friends and clients to podcasters like you so they can share their stories. And hey guys, you don't have to hire me or want to buy something from me to reach out to me. I love meeting new people, making new friends, and seeing where they lead. Absolutely.
No, and your attitude is very contagious. I remember getting that first email from you, and I tell you what, you are a good old Texan boy, and nothing can explain it better than that good old Southern hospitality.
Yep, we're biased for sure.
Yep, we are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But thanks again for being on the show, and everybody out there, check this guy out. He's a really great individual. He's got a great story to tell, and you can read about it, you can hear about it, and stay tuned for our next shows. Do you have anything else you want to add, Alton?
No, I just want to thank Max again. It's been a great show, and I'm super glad that you came on here today. It was awesome for me, and hope you enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had a great time. Looking forward to meeting you guys in person. And when this corona is over, I'm going to hold you to introducing me to your musician friends so we can record some stuff together and maybe get me on American Idol or America's Got Talent or The Voice or something.
We'll just start our own. How about that?
Another crazy idea. Here we go.
All right, guys. Say bye.
Dangerous.
Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real-life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.